It's time to think about holiday baking, and I have not just one, but two recipes to share with you today. I'll be making my Brownie Brittle, perfect for the holiday cookie tin. And if you're looking to make a confection, well, you should try my Rocky Road bars. I use the Brownie Brittle to add a little crunch to those Rocky Road bars. So let's start with that Brownie Brittle. I'm going to mix two types of sugar, my granulated sugar and brown sugar, in a pot, along with a little bit of couverture baking chocolate. So not your chocolate chips that you add to cookies. Because this is being melted into the cookie recipe, you want to use baking chocolate. Just a little bit of milk, and I'll take this to the stove and melt it over medium-low heat until it's smooth. Give that a second to get going. When you're melting this, the sugar won't completely dissolve into the mixture, so don't expect to see a smooth ganache-like base to this batter. I've seen Brownie Brittle recipes before, and I'll admit they hadn't piqued my interest until I was actually trying to make my Rocky Road bar recipe, and I went out to buy chocolate wafer cookies. Well, you know what? Around here, they don't sell them anymore. So I figured, well, I have to make my own. And I love the fact that this Brownie Brittle can be a cookie all on its own, or it can be used in desserts. Or if you're ever in a pinch, need chocolate cookie crumbs, this is definitely the recipe. Now that the chocolate has melted, I can take this off the heat. And I will admit, normally I just add everything to the pot. So it's a one pot cookie recipe. I want you to be able to see everything, so I'm going to transfer this to a bowl. And you can see right away how that sugar has not melted or dissolved, but now it's time to add the remaining ingredients that does make a nice smooth batter. So the batter is just like a brownie batter, but it's designed to crisp up when it bakes. So in go 2 eggs. Because I melted my chocolate and sugar over a medium-low heat, then I know it's not too hot and the eggs can go in. Vegetable oil. And a splash of vanilla. There we go. Now it's really starting to look like a brownie batter. But we need more chocolate. So I've got a combination of cocoa powder and all-purpose flour. If you are adapting this to gluten-free baking, it will adapt very easily. Replace your all-purpose flour or your wheat flour with a gluten-free baking blend, and you should have the exact same result. Because really it's about, like in a brownie, it's about the eggs and the chocolate that hold everything together. I've got just a touch of baking powder, a little bit of salt, and because I'm whisking this in, and it's being spread in a thin layer, I have found you don't really need to sift. A good whisk will break up any lumps in the cocoa powder, and you can visibly see when the batter is smooth. This is one of those ideal recipes for the holiday cookie tin because it's a definite make ahead. It stays crispy and crunchy. It's kind of like the brownie version of biscotti, except of course, a lot more tender. Meaning if you make it a week or 2 weeks ahead, you can keep it in an airtight container and it will stay nice and crisp. You can freeze it, but this is a big batch. Once you see how I spread the batter out, it might take up a little space in your freezer if you were to freeze it, but it would freeze fine. There we go. I can see the batter is nice and smooth. And now it's time to put it on the trays. I've got 2 baking trays lined with parchment, and I'll divide the batter between the 2. Get every last bit of batter there. Here we go. And I'll use one hand to hold down the parchment as I start spreading. Now, if you've ever tried making a sponge cake, you spread your sponge cake batter, if you're making a sheet pan of cake, right to the edges. With this brownie brittle, you don't need to. You just want to spread it into an evenly thin layer. It won't spread any further when it's baking, but this just makes for easier cleanup, and then you can slide the parchment out of the pan easily once the brittle has cooled. Just flip this around. Because you're breaking this into pieces, it doesn't have to look perfect or be in any perfect shape, just as level as possible. The brittle's now ready for the oven, which I've preheated to 325, and this takes 30 minutes to bake. You'll see the surface of the brittle goes matte, evenly matte, and it will still be pliable when it comes out of the oven because of the soft state, warm state of the sugar. When you've cooled it to room temperature, if you find by breaking a piece it isn't brittle, it's still soft, you can put it back in the oven and let it go for just another 5 minutes or so. So it's as much baking it and drying it out at the same time. Here is the brownie brittle baked, nice and crisp. I like to let it cool on the trays completely, and then you just peel off the paper and crack it into pieces. Now, you can dress this up a little bit if you want. You can melt some chocolate chips, drizzle that on top of the brownie brittle, maybe sprinkle on some crushed candy canes to make it a little festive. But it has this nice crispness, but it's tender at the same time. I do want to set this aside because now I'm using the brownie brittle in my Rocky Road bars. So this is a full-on confection. To make a Rocky Road bar, you should include marshmallows, walnut pieces traditionally, or you can use peanut pieces, something crunchy like a cookie, and then lots of chocolate. So the candy base starts with 10 ounces of chocolate. I lean towards the couverture baking chocolate, but this is one of those recipes you can use either baking chocolate or regular chocolate chips. Oh, missing a couple chips in there. I melt in a little butter, and then it's essentially like making fudge. So I'm using condensed milk. So a full tin of sweetened condensed milk goes right in, and this is going to be melted together. So this is the chocolatey base that holds all of those fillings or inclusions in place. All right, with all that chocolate, I want to make sure I do melt it on a medium-low heat. While the chocolate melts, I can measure my brownie brittle. So it's about 2 cups by volume, or 140 grams by weight. I did test this one out just to make it simple. I'll just weigh the big pieces first. Of course, this is one of those cases where exact precision is not essential. A little extra sneaks in, that's absolutely fine. So I'll just lightly crush that. Because this is a candy, we're going to put it in a loaf pan, set it, and then slice it. So you want it broken into pieces so you don't have large shards, but when you slice into the Rocky Road, you get little pieces of everything. Marshmallow, walnut, and brittle. The brittle does soften up a little bit, almost becomes more brownie-like when it sits in the chocolate. Let's see, there are a couple big pieces here. Yeah, that's about what I'm looking for. I'll set that aside. Even though I'm melting a large quantity of chocolate, because I've also got a large quantity of condensed milk and the butter that protects the chocolate, that's why you don't have to use a water bath. If you wanted to, you could melt everything in the microwave, whatever is easiest for you. There we go. Everything is nice and smooth. And I will transfer this to a bowl. That way it can cool down just a little bit. I do like to check the temperature before I add the marshmallows, especially because, well, we're not trying to make s'mores here. You can let this cool for about 5 minutes if it feels warmer than body temperature. I think giving it a little stir should do absolutely what I need to do. That's why I melted it over medium-low heat. So now I'll stir in a little bit of vanilla and a pinch of salt. It's just a habit I have, adding my salt at the very end. Whenever I'm making anything candied, there's no cooking sugar here, like making a traditional fudge or caramel, but it's always a good tip to add your salt when your mixture comes off the heat. The salt can interfere with the candying process. Here it's not critical, it's just habit. Just letting you know what goes on in this kooky mind. At holiday time, there's a lot going on in this mind. Okay, so now I'm adding my walnut halves, which I've toasted. So they spent about 15 minutes in a 350 oven. I'll stir those in, and those chunky brownie brittle pieces. And as I stir, I'll break them down a little bit further. And this is cooling down the chocolate mixture even more and looking delicious. And just a little note, even though I've gone through the process of showing you how to make the brownie brittle, if you want to make the Rocky Road bars, but not the brittle, you can replace the brittle with a tender chocolate cookie. I mean, it could be a sandwich cookie, anything to stir in. And the same goes for the walnuts. While walnuts are traditional, I did mention peanuts. If you wanted a nut-free version, then I suggest good salted pretzel pieces would keep their crunch inside the Rocky Road bar, and that salt with the crunch against the chocolate, well, delicious. Okay, and now in go the mini marshmallows. And make sure everything is coated nicely. Oh, beautiful mess here. Okay. I'm setting my Rocky Road bars in a loaf pan that I've lined with parchment paper. You can do it in a 9-inch square pan. You'll just have flatter bars. I'm kind of going for the candy shop fudge effect. You know how they make slabs of fudge and cut it into big bar shapes? That's what I'm kind of after here. And it takes up less space in the fridge too. And give it a good press into the pan so it gets into the corners. You've got just enough of that chocolate goo to hold everything in place. And you want to give this a good, especially the thicker 9x5 pan, a good 3 hours to chill in the fridge. Like the Brownie Brittle, it's another great make-ahead recipe for the holidays. My Rocky Road bars have had a good chance to chill, so now it's time to portion it up. Well, that's a fulfilling task. My own version of unboxing Rocky Road bars. So now to cut slices. If you wanted to give away large wedges like fudge packed up as part of a cookie tin, you could. And then of course you can cut these into smaller pieces. I think I'm going to go for longer pieces here. And another joyful note about a recipe like this keeps in the fridge for 2 weeks. It also freezes wonderfully. So make it ahead, freeze it. You've got it on hand for the holidays. I tend to always have a full freezer. So I test recipes for freezing, but I don't always keep them. But sometimes I forget about them or lose them. And the best thing is come January or February, when you find that hunk of Rocky Road bar that you forgot you had in the freezer, it's like reliving the holidays all over again. I really hope you give these recipes a try. I love reading the comments below, especially after you've made something or even when you make it your own, changing up the ingredients a little bit, which you could do with these Rocky Road bars. In the meantime, I wish you a happy holiday baking season, and I'll see you again for another delicious recipe. It's like fudge, but better. Ooh, there's that Brownie Brittle bite. Crispy and light. Bye, everyone.